Hey guys, welcome back to another Facebook Live broadcast. My name is Sarah King. I am a physical therapist and owner of Invigorate Physical Therapy and Wellness here in Austin, Texas. And we are here with Tim Hague, who is an amazing role model in the Parkinson's world. And I apologize for being a bit late, but just a little bit of an intro for Tim. You guys know that I am hugely ecstatic about bringing on Parkinson's role models, people who are powerful and positive and realistic people in our community who act as amazing inspiration for you as you journey along your Parkinson's path. So Tim Hague Sr. is here with us today. He may look familiar to you guys because he was the Amazing Race Canada's first season winner, along with his son, Tim Hague Jr. He's a motivational speaker. He spoke at TEDx Winnipeg in 2015 about being diagnosed with Parkinson's, and he's also an author of a book that's coming out in May of 2018 called Perseverance, the 7 skills you need to survive, thrive, and accomplish more than you ever imagined. And so I am just jazzed to have him here today because I have looked up to Tim since I started Invigorate. I saw him speak at the World Parkinson Congress in 2016. I was so inspired. So I reached out and here we are today. So Tim, thank you so much for joining us today. Thanks for going through some of these tech glitches to get you onto our Facebook Live broadcast, but I'm so happy you're here.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
How are you doing?
I'm doing okay. I'm doing well. It's a bit of a parky day, to be honest, but the sun is shining. It's a beautiful day in Winnipeg, and I've got no real complaints.
Beautiful. Yeah, what's the weather like in Winnipeg? I have no concept of weather because in Austin, I think it's 75 degrees here today. So what is it in Canada today?
No, it's not. It's about minus 10 Celsius. So if anybody can do the quick math there, that would put it in about probably the mid-20s.
Oh, yeah. Okay, well.
It's a nice day in Winnipeg.
There's a reason why I don't live up north. Yes. Well, something that's really interesting about Tim and I is even though he's way up north now and I'm way south now, he was born in Corpus Christi but moved to Kansas City and grew up in Kansas City, which is where I grew up. And so we both have a common understanding of Midwest cold, but I do not understand Canada cold. And I don't know if you understand Texas hot, but you probably do. You've done your fair share of travels, I know.
Yeah, I'll take my Canada cold over your Texas hot. Any day. It is way you can do.
Okay.
My wife always said you can put on more clothes. Okay. You can only take so many off. So.
Oh, on my end it's glitching, but I don't know if it's just me. I'm trying to pull up a little face. Oh, are you there? Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, there we go. Okay, sorry, the audio is glitching for me, but okay, well, let's jump right into it. As you guys are watching, I'm trying to watch my screen with Tim and our Facebook Live broadcast to watch our comments in the comment section. So if you guys are watching, I would love for you guys to put a comment in the comment section below, introduce yourself, say hello to Tim, say hello to me, and let us know where you're tuning in from. And if you have any questions for Tim, we're going to take them all in. Lauren's going to collect them. And then at the end, we'll have a little short Q&A about everything related to Parkinson's. Tim has the ability to turn down any question, but he's a gracious host. And so we'll try and get to as many questions as we can at the end. So just tune in, say hi, and let us know where you're watching from. So a little quick blurb about how we met, again, was at the World Parkinson Congress in 2016. And you were talking about how you won the Amazing Race Canada. And your journey was far from this, it was kind of a hero's journey, but it was a rocky road. And I think that's when you got this inspiration to go out and be an advocate for Parkinson's and really spread the message about perseverance and what that means to someone who's been diagnosed with Parkinson's. But before we get there, let's take a step back and just let everybody know kind of about Tim, Parkinson's or not. Tim, can you tell us a little bit maybe about your family, about your background?
Sure.
Where were you before you got diagnosed?
Sure. Well, I grew up in Kansas City, like you said. If you want to go way back, I was 24 when Cheryl, my wife, and I moved to Canada. Moved to Winnipeg, been here for 28 years now. And we have 4 children, the oldest of which is Tim Jr., who ran the race with me. He's 28. He's married, has a little girl, Ella's 2.5, very, very fun. Then another daughter, or a daughter, and then twins, a boy and a girl, who are 23 and then 20, soon to be 20. The twins will be 20 in May. So I've no more teenagers in the house, which means I'm getting old. And moved to Winnipeg, lived here for 28 years, like I said. Was a nurse for 21 years until Parkinson's came along, and I have been retired from nursing now for a couple of years. I have always been involved in sports, ran a lot, cycled a lot. I rode, 5 years, year-round here in Winnipeg. That's through the winter. I have ridden through deep, deep snow that you can't imagine on my bike with my 2 legs. Lots of fun. And always been very active, and which was a huge bonus when I was diagnosed with Parkinson's, of course, because that has made a very, very big difference in how I've progressed. And now I am a retired nurse and speaking and author. And that's kind of the nutshell.
Yeah. Well, we'll talk a little bit more too about everything that you're doing because I want to highlight your compassion and your, just the heart side of what you do for people now, outside of motivational speaking, obviously. But I think background is really unique because you have a background in healthcare as a nurse. You have a background in, you're an active person before you got diagnosed with Parkinson's. And your father, who was not your biological father, is that right? Also had Parkinson's.
Right. That is correct. I was adopted when I was a little baby.
Okay. And so what I feel like is really interesting from that perspective is, they say Parkinson's is genetic. And so, but your father had Parkinson's, and he obviously was not your biological father. Not to dive too deep into that, but you did get to see what it was like to live with Parkinson's. And so as we get into your diagnosis and your journey, you had a really solid, educated, informed background. And the thing that I always encourage people to do is empower themselves with knowledge about their condition, about other people who are amazing role models. And so I think that your background is just really interesting because you rebounded quite quickly. Maybe we can talk about your diagnosis journey, because your time between being diagnosed and you had a little bit of a pit where you kind of fell into, I don't know if it was depression, kind of a low point, but then picked yourself back up relatively quickly. There are a lot of people who hit that slump and maybe are still in that slump that are watching now, and they've been feeling in that slump for a while, and you were able to kind of come out of it. And so maybe you can talk us through what that journey was like from diagnosis into maybe where you are today.
Yeah. Well, there's lots there. I have to restate a little bit of what you said there when you said that I had a good, informed piece from my father having Parkinson's. It wasn't as informed as you might imagine, because Dad was really sick for a long time. He had his first heart attack when he was 55, and he had very bad cardiac history, along with diabetes and a number of other things. And Parkinson's actually came along late in the day for him from a health standpoint. So we weren't terribly concerned about his Parkinson's. We were always worried about the next heart attack, how bad his diabetes was. And those things kept our attention far more than the Parkinson's did. And quite honestly, it wasn't until I was diagnosed with Parkinson's that I actually went back in my memory and revisited my father's Parkinson's, and there picked up more information than I did early on. Because, like I said, it just wasn't. Parkinson's, as a buddy of mine likes to say, we're going to live with it. It's not a killer. It's not a death sentence. It's a life sentence. And so we're in it for the long haul. Whereas with Dad, we were always concerned about those two things that could have been a death sentence, his cardiac and his diabetes. So that's a little bit of background there. My diagnosis came along in August of 2010. I first noticed a tremor in my left foot. And I had been nursing for a long time at that point. So I knew that there was no good reason to be having a tremor. And with Dad having had Parkinson's, I've got a half sister who has MS. Right away, I figured it was one of those two things. And sure enough, it cropped up to be Parkinson's. I went and saw my GP, ended up seeing a movement disorder specialist, which we're very fortunate to have 4 of here in Winnipeg. And was formally diagnosed in 2011. And like you said, I went on to have a bit of a struggle there for a while. It wasn't clinical depression. It was awfully close because it was a really bad time in life. Because I knew where this was going, knew what Parkinson's looked like and what the prognosis was for it. But eventually got my act together and started riding again, started cycling again, running, and doing the things I knew I needed to do to look after myself. And that next year ran a sprint distance triathlon, which for those who don't know, it's a shorter distance triathlon, still triathlon, but shorter distance. Yeah. And haven't been running a whole lot since. I'm just getting back to my running, simply because I'm finally on a medication that is allowing me to. Seems to be giving me enough of a window with symptoms to be able to manage it. So we'll see where that goes. But it's been 7 years now, and I took 3 years before I started any medication at all. And when it did start, I started with Cinemat, Levocarb for us here. And I've just started a second med. So not bad.
Do you mind sharing? I know a lot of people wonder what the second med is. Would you mind sharing?
Yeah.
Cinemat,
No,
you added something secondary?
Yeah, I don't mind sharing. I've told people that whenever I share medications, you have to remember, we are all different. And the second medication is nothing special. You've probably all heard it. Some of you will go, nah, whatever, tried that, failed. Others will go, oh yeah, I'm on that, didn't do that much. Others may say like me that it did wonders. But it's selegiline. And my doc said it'll work or it won't work. And especially, I'm 53, so in a younger set, he doesn't have a lot of the worries and concerns that might come with that drug in an older individual. So I started off on a low dose, and it was literally a light switch. That first day that I took it, it lit up, and I have been 100% better. I have been significantly better ever since. Significantly, which is shocking because from a nursing standpoint, you don't tend to see those kind of responses to medication. So now don't go everybody looking for your doctor to give you selegiline.
Yes. So this is a great time we're going to come back to your diagnosis story a little bit, but as Tim is sharing his personalized plan of attack, right? We are currently at Invigorate. We're in day 2 of a Parkinson's plan of attack 30-day workshop. So we are working on crafting our own Parkinson's plan of attack. Some of you may also be on Cinemat and selegiline, or however you say it. And you have different dosages, you have different timing, you have different effects. Everyone is different. So don't go off and copy everything that Tim does, but find inspiration. You can maybe talk to your doctor about adjusting your medication, because sometimes when you're feeling really low and you're feeling like, oh, this is just a Parkinson's prognosis, you don't have to accept that as the norm, the true statement. You can go back to your doctor and say, this isn't working, or this is working. Can we adjust things accordingly? So, and we're going to come back to your Parkinson's plan of attack, but I think it's really valuable to sit in a place of, in this conversation about where you went. And I'm not expecting you to say any certain answer, but just for you, Tim, what was that process like when you were you were coming around on getting back on the exercise bandwagon, or you were maybe getting your fight back a little bit? What can you put yourself back in that process and share with people where you were and kind of what gave you that inertia, that momentum, that motivation to get up and move?
Well, it was, I share this in my book, Perseverance, so I won't tell you everything, but I'll tell you a good portion of it. I finally came to a point where I just realized, this isn't the way I live my life. It wasn't the way I wanted to pursue life. I was 46 years old. I was far from dead. It was time to get up and get going again. And so I decided that I would. And I basically came to the conclusion that there was 3 ways that I could look at this disease. I could try to do what I call the man thing and just say that, it's benign. I can ignore it. I can set it on the shelf and pretend it's not there. Well, that lasted for a little while, but Parkinson's, it won't be ignored. It's a daily routine. It's rarely out of mind, and it simply won't be ignored. So after I dealt with that, I realized, well, it could be a curse. I could treat it like it's the world's worst thing that's ever happened. I could raise the fist to God and to heaven and say, why me? And have my pity party and blame God and be ticked off for the rest of my life. And quite frankly, I had to do some real soul searching with that, because I started to realize how unfair my life had been. That in 1964, my parents adopted 6 kids in addition to the 3 that they already had. And while we were never rich, we certainly had a roof over our head, food in our bellies, clothes on our back. We were given an opportunity to go to school. We were opportunity to go to post-secondary school. I became a nurse, met a wonderful gal, Canadian. I've had a fantastic career all my life, 4 beautiful kids, grandchild, making a very good living. And I have the opportunity to travel the world with a group called Compassion, doing work on behalf of children living in poverty. And once I stopped and looked at the totality of my life in comparison to anyone else on the planet, I realized that I had been given an inordinate amount of stuff in comparison to everyone else. And it made no sense to be angry with God, to say, why me? Because I never stopped and say, why me, when I was given it? Excuse me. When I was given everything else. Never stopped and said, why, God, did you give me this house, this wonderful wife, these kids? Shouldn't have done that. Right? Mm-hmm. So I decided it's not going to be a curse. If it's not benign, the only other thing I could think of that it was, it's a blessing. There must be something good in this thing, both for me and for those around me, that we can find some positive in it. And quite frankly, to date, Parkinson's has given me far more than it's taken. I have had the opportunity to literally travel the world, speaking and sharing on behalf of people with Parkinson's. I would have never written this book without Parkinson's. I would have never been on the Amazing Race Canada without Parkinson's. So while I don't get hung up thinking about the future, because the future is still to come, assuming we make it there, it could have some dark moments. The reality is today, the sun is shining. I am healthy. Life is much, much better for me than 95% of people on the planet. So
I love that.
I finally decided it was time to get up and run my try and get going again. So that's what I did.
Yeah, that shift in perspective a little bit, and not being someone who has been diagnosed with Parkinson's, I can't empathize, and I definitely don't offer any sympathy. I just am so impressed and so humbled, I think, when I hear you speak about that, because how many times do all of us not acknowledge all the beautiful things that we're given in our life? And yes, there will be challenges, and I hear about people's challenges often, and I'm sure you do too. And something that I always try and encourage myself included to do is take a second to just be grateful for one thing and shift that perspective a little bit. And so I love that. Thanks for sharing. So we're going to dive into your book here in a second, but in the realm of your Parkinson's plan of attack, how you go about attacking your Parkinson's diagnosis. We've talked about medication, and if you have any other medications that you want to share, feel free. But what does the totality of your Parkinson's plan of attack look like when you're dialing in and you're saying, I'm doing as much as I can? What does that look like?
Well, it's lots actually. Those are the only two medications that I'm on, so that's easy enough. But there's, of course, my healthcare team. In Canada, we are very, very fortunate to have the healthcare that we do. I have everything that I could possibly need here, which is fabulous. I have the medications that we want to have. We have things like DBS and Duodopa, the things available to us that we can get when we need them. I have fabulous doctors. I have a fantastic GP who's a part of my plan of attack. I have a fabulous movement disorder specialist. I have a fabulous psychiatrist. And people often don't want to talk about that third one, but he has proven to be one of the most important pieces of my plan. Because for me, a lot of my symptoms are the non-motor. If it were simply a tremor, if it were simply a little bit of rigidity, I would be thrilled, quite frankly. But it's the mild cognitive impairment that I seem to struggle with. And people don't often know what that means because we don't talk about that piece very often. But it doesn't mean I have dementia. It doesn't mean that I can't think. It means that I can't multitask. Now, if you take and put a nurse in a high-stress environment, I was manager of a surgical floor, as well as covering our 15-suite OR in a 450-bed tertiary care center here in Winnipeg, and didn't realize it at the time, but had mild cognitive impairment setting in. I would find myself at work from time to time completely incapable of dealing with the 200 staff that I had, all of the emails, all of the demands every day, the phone constantly ringing, and I would find myself sitting at my office desk crying because I had no idea what to do. Literally, I had no idea what task to do first. And I thought it was just nuts or whatever. I had no real idea what was going on. And it was only much later that I come to understand what was indeed happening, that my Parkinson's was affecting this far more than it was anything else. And ultimately, that's what cost me my job. I like to joke that, my patients got real nervous when they saw me coming at them with a needle. But the fact is that I was in management. I wasn't touching. I didn't have much hands-on practice anymore. But there were still a lot of people who were responsible for me keeping it together here, which was indeed the biggest problem that I was having. So my psychiatrist helped sort that out along with my movement disorder specialist, et cetera, et cetera. And we've gotten that much more on track. I know now that I don't do 3 things at once. I don't do 2 things at once. I like to tell this story here recently, a couple months ago. I decided to sit down, and I like watching European soccer. So I decided to sit down and watch some soccer, and I was going to write a couple of emails at the same time. I got to the halfway point of the game, and I was absolutely frustrated that I wasn't enjoying the game. And I realized halfway through I hadn't written any emails. I can't do 2 things at once. Literally cannot focus on 2 separate things at once. I had to stop. I walked away, did the email because one of them needed to get done, finished that, came back, watched the game, had a great second half. And that is mild cognitive impairment, which I would be more than happy to get rid of that if possible. But the selegiline seems to be helping with that a fair bit.
That's great. I like that. I appreciate you sharing about the psychiatrist, because that is something that a lot of people don't speak to. And it's like a hidden superhero on your team. And everyone's experience with them is different, but I know that they can offer a lot of tools and strategies, whether it's practicing certain things or giving you the strategies to compensate. Sounds like not multitasking is maybe a strategy for you, but I appreciate you sharing that, and feel free to speak to that and the strategies you get at any point, because I cannot encourage people enough to have a psychiatrist on their team. And that's something we'll talk about later this week in our Parkinson's plan of attack. I think it's day 6 is building out your team, and the psychiatrist is definitely on there. So,
well, I've always said to people, if you were having chest pain, if you were concerned that you were having a cardiac issue, you go to a cardiologist. If you were concerned that you had Parkinson's or a stroke, you go see a neurologist. Different neurologist, but still neurologist. If you had a broken bone, you'd go to the emergency room and see an orthopod and get that bone fixed. If this isn't working so well, why are we so hesitant to see the appropriate doctor to help fix that? We have allowed so many stereotypes, so many negative baggage pieces to be attached to our mental health that we do ourselves further damage by not simply acknowledging that this is a part of my being, this is a part of my body that a specialist can help me with. Why would I not get help when I feel that I need it? So we need to acknowledge that and to work on it together. And then, of course, my plan of attack also includes lots of exercise. And you want to go there? Because I can go there for a long
definitely.
time.
I know Roger Jenkins, it looked like, had a question about, he asked, what types of exercise do you participate in? So have at it. Let us know.
My weekly goal is to, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, is spin class, 6 a.m. at the gym. Yeah, I know it's a little off. 6 a.m. at the gym for a 45-minute spin class. Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday, the goal is to do yoga. I do a personal set of yoga that I've developed over time. That's about 45 minutes long. And then I'm just the last 3 weeks, I've started reincorporating my run again, where I'm trying to get out probably 2 times last week, maybe 2, depending on my schedule this week, 3 times this week on those Tuesday, Thursday, Saturdays. And that's just a timed 15 minutes, 20 minutes, just to try to build the endurance back up a bit with it. The thing with the running is what the selegiline has brought is that it's gotten rid of some of the cramps and some of the pain that I was having when I was running. I would have everything would curl up on my left foot. I would get these crazy cramps in my left arm, and all of that's gone. And so I feel like I've been given a window that I can try running again. So I'm trying to add that back in. Now, in addition to that, I also am the executive director for U-Turn Parkinson's, a local charity that we have for Parkinson's. And we run Rocksteady Boxing. And I try to get some of that in during the week. But with that, I'm not doing quite as much as I was before because my shoulders won't take the boxing. I can't hit the heavy bag. So I still do the circuits and do some of the other stuff, but not so much of the boxing anymore.
Okay, awesome. And that's a pretty consistent routine and schedule that you've gotten yourself into. Does that help you stay consistent? The schedule helps you stay consistent, or do you feel like even on days you're not motivated, since you know your schedule for it?
I know me well enough that if I don't get out of bed, if I don't get out of bed early enough in the morning, I won't get my exercise in, because I've been used to getting up early, going to work, and I would cycle to work all the time. So now to try to get up and go to the gym at 10 or 12, in the afternoon, just doesn't work. It's way easier for me to set the clock for 5:20. I'm awake, I roll out of bed and just go. So that works for me.
Perfect. Okay. Yeah, that's something that I talk to a lot of my booster program participants about. about setting it in your schedule first and not relying on motivation or a window of opportunity to get your exercise in. So,
no,
okay.
That's absolutely correct. You cannot allow your exercise to become the second thing that you do in your day. Your physical activity, your physical fitness has to be first, and then you schedule everything else around that. Otherwise, it'll just never happen. And it's very important for me to say here that I have been doing a lot of exercise for a lot of years. So it's very important that no one out there stops and hears me say that what I'm doing sounds daunting to them or to you, because what I'm doing may not work for you. What you're doing may not work for me. I have a good friend who swims all the time. Well, as you can see, I'm half black. I hate water. I can say that. I hate swimming. I have swam. I can swim. I ran a triathlon, but I do not enjoy the water. So she goes crazy in the pool. I do not. If I ever get a chance to run a try, maybe I'll do it again, but not today. So what I'm saying is that we're each different. We each have different likes and abilities. Find something that you love and do that, and do it consistently. Don't try to mimic what I do.
I love that. Yep. Everyone is individual. If you've met one person with Parkinson's, you've met one person with Parkinson's. Okay. So before we launch into what I feel like is an amazing part of your Parkinson's plan, I just want to say hello to some people who are watching that are checking in, just because I know you guys are sticking with us here. So it looks like Matthew Muller's in here, Tiffany Wilson, Nate Dixon, Debbie Chance. We've got Megan Ivy. All right. Carly says hi. Nate's here. Debbie Chance is here. Beautiful, beautiful. All right.
Where are the Canadians?
You know what I'm realizing is, where are the Canadians? This is, okay. Let me just do this one thing real fast. So something, Tim, that I really want to speak to is that inside your Parkinson's plan of attack is a core foundation of an attitude that you have, which is this skill of perseverance. Mm-hmm. And so obviously you have a book that's coming out in May. Everyone go and purchase his book. I can't, it comes out in May. I haven't read it myself, but just by speaking with him, I know that it's going to be full of really awesome stuff. So again, it's the 7 skills you need to survive, thrive, and accomplish more than you have ever imagined. And so can you speak to us a little bit about perseverance? Take us there. Take us into why you wrote this book, why it's so important.
Sure, you bet. Well, first of all, let's do the little plug so we can get it out of the way. It's available on Amazon.com now. It goes on sale May 8th. And if any of you are going to be in Toronto or Winnipeg, we're having book launches in Toronto on the 7th of May and the 15th in Winnipeg. You can come up, see what May is like in Winnipeg. How did this book get started? Well, the ugly truth is that I started speaking after World Parkinson's Congress, and that little snowball just kept growing and growing and growing, and I found myself in this new career. So other professional speakers would start saying to me, well, if you're going to be in this game long term, you need a website and a book. It's got a somewhat interesting story. I think I'll write a book. I figured I'd have my 12 sitting in the corner and be able to say that I was a published author and never sell any. Well, the short story is that Penguin Canada came along, the largest book publisher in Canada, and bought the manuscript. And here I am, about to be officially an author. But the story is what was motivating me. The publishing wasn't so much the issue as much as being able to put my story on paper. There's a bit of a memoir to the book in that it talks about my adoption story a bit, talks about the amazing race and how we got there. But then it goes into Parkinson's and this idea of that perseverance can be learned. Now, just so that we're clear on what perseverance is, because it's not something we talk about often, it's a difficult word. And it's difficult because it's often attached to difficult things. So my definition that I use for perseverance is to carry, yeah, see, there goes my mind. What is my definition of perseverance? To carry on in your course of action, even in the face of difficulty, with little or no evidence of success. To carry on in your course of action, even in the face of difficulty, with little or no evidence of success. Well, you put that definition alongside Parkinson's, and that's what we do every day, right? We carry on in our course of action, even when it's difficult, even when it looks like we're never going to succeed. And I wanted to share some of the things that I had learned in life from growing up, as I like to say, a half-breed in a very black and white world in Kansas City. What it meant to exist as one of 6 kids in a home who was adopted by 2 white folks and were given a shot at life. But that shot still coming with a lot of difficulty, a lot of hardship along the way. And how do you get through that? Well, you persevere. You carry on in your course of action, even when it is difficult, even when you can't see how you're going to survive it. You keep going. And I believe that all of that growing up time, watching my dad go through his physical difficulties with his health, set me up to be ready for the Amazing Race in Parkinson's. If you watched our Amazing Race story, you would have seen that we sucked. We struggled leg after leg of the race. We never, ever looked like the team that was going to win. And yet we came around and pulled out that Cinderella story that no one expected. And that in turn set up the story for Parkinson's. That I firmly believe that we can learn this skill of persevering, that we can stay in our race, that we can continue to live well, live our best and brightest, regardless of what this disease throws at us. And we will one day reach a point where someone turns around and says to us, "My, you're awfully lucky." Well, you ever hear the adage of the rock star or the singer who persevered for 20 years and finally got lucky one day and became a mega hit? Well, I think that's what we're going to do. We're going to persevere. We're going to stay in our race. And one day we're going to find a win with this disease that we never expected, that we never quite thought would come, but eventually did, because we stayed in our race and we persevered. And it's hard. I like to say that persevering is a whole lot more than just not giving up, because not giving up doesn't really say anything. It doesn't tell us what we need to do. But persevering, there's a lot that goes into persevering. It's not just about not doing something or not giving up, because what do we do when we say we're not going to give up? I often feel like we say, "Well, I didn't give up." Well, what did you do? Well, I think we have to persevere. And in order to persevere, I've laid out 7 skills that we need to do, to focus on in order to be successful. And I think that we can be successful even with Parkinson's, that each of us can win our individual races with this disease, and that we as a community can win our race with this disease if we will but stay in our race, not step off the path, but stay in the race and persevere. We will see wins, and hopefully one day the big win.
Absolutely. Well, can you share a couple, maybe 1 or 2 of the skills that you talk about in your book? There's 7 skills of perseverance. Maybe a couple that you feel like would be good places to start for the people watching.
Well, I think for our purposes today, what's generally the 7th in my list, they don't have any particular order, but that's just how it kind of works out, is appropriate for us today is community. I don't think we can do well with this disease outside of community. We need forums like this. We need support groups. We need our rock steady boxing. We need our cycling groups. We need our people who look like us, who sound like us, who think like us, who shake like us, who gets this disease. And then we need times where we're away from each other, because it can drive us a little crazy if that's all you spend your time with. But we need people who understand what we're going through. And that's tough in Parkinson's, because when I was first diagnosed at 46 years old, I knew no one in their 40s with Parkinson's disease. Even now, the number of people that I know in their 50s, I suppose, are a lot more than other people, because I've had the opportunity to travel and meet lots. But still, the reality is I met a gentleman here a month ago. He is 54 years old and knows personally no one in their 50s with Parkinson's. That's tough. That is a tough place to be when you're a middle-aged man, kids just out of high school, just going through university, and you know no one else that looks like you. That makes for a tough row to hoe, as we said in the old days. So it's important that we look for those opportunities, those places where we can involve ourselves with others who are as similar to us as possible, so that we have someone to talk to bounce ideas off of, to say, have you tried that drug? Have you tried this? Have you tried that? Because we are so different. It is a bit of a crapshoot some days as to what will work, and in figuring that out. So that's a bit of a challenge. So community, very, very important to find your people, stay with your people. And for me, that community is number one, my family, wife and kids, extremely important to everything that I do. Talked about my doctors earlier, my healthcare team, and then all of my friends within the Parkinson's community, but equally important, all of my friends outside of the Parkinson's community, because I have to take time to get my head out of this disease sometimes, because so much of what I do is about Parkinson's. The book is about Parkinson's. Excuse me. When I speak, whether it's corporate work or Parkinson's work, it's still about Parkinson's. If I get called to do an interview, sorry, it's about Parkinson's. Everything that I think and breathe most days is Parkinson's. And thus, a part of the book is about Compassion. Compassion is a child sponsorship organization that works with poor kids around the world. And people will sometimes ask me, why Compassion? How does that fit into what you're doing? Well, the reason it fits is because it has nothing to do with me and nothing to do with Parkinson's. It gets me totally out of this headspace that is Parkinson's. And it allows me to see that there are those people who have so much less than me, and gives me the opportunity to not think about Parkinson's for a change. So number one, I would say community. That would be the first skill that I would talk about. I like lots of them. So I think the one I'll give you is let go of the happiness myth. And this one's kind of different. My wife actually doesn't like my title. But it's let go of the happiness myth. And it derives from my girls are 23 and 20, or 19, almost 20. And I always told them growing up, I said, don't believe the lie. Don't believe the lie that the magazines tell you that a young lady has to look and be like this. So often what they are told, what young ladies are told, is so completely, it's a lie to what most young ladies will ever look and be. And it's just not right. I've taken that and applied that to Parkinson's. Don't believe the lie that there should never be suffering in our world. Yes, I'm letting that sit for a moment. It is a lie that there should never be any suffering in our world. First of all, every day proves me right. Pick up today's newspaper. Turn on CNN. Turn on Fox. All you will hear is suffering in one form or another. Take some time to travel to places that aren't an all-inclusive. You will find suffering everywhere we turn. If that is the reality of our world, why would I presume that suffering would never touch my life? What makes me so special that suffering should never touch me? So if suffering is a norm, if it is actually a normative state within our world, within our lives, it changes the way we respond to it. It changes the way we think about it. It changes how I'm going to live my life in relationship to suffering. I accept it. I accept it as a part of what has been allowed to come into my world. And I realize that if I allow it to, suffering can teach me perseverance. Now, this is where a lot of the gold is, okay? Because suffering, if we allow suffering to work in our lives, I am convinced it will develop us as people. It will change who I am at my core being, my character, who I am when I'm all by myself. It will change who I am. As my character, well, I've actually got my thought out of order here a little bit. Suffering will develop perseverance. As I learn to persevere, it will change my character. And as my character is deepened and matured and strengthened, I find this little 4-letter word called hope. Because I discover that I can. I can live with this disease. I can have a meaningful life. I can give back to my world. I can be a good husband still. I can provide for my family. There are so many things I can do, but I only learn that after my character has been developed. My character will only be developed when I have learned to persevere. And perseverance comes into our lives when we accept the fact that suffering is normative. And that is the skill of letting go of the happiness myth. Or my wife's title, Don't Believe the Lie.
Your wife's title is a little bit less in your face, but I think that
yes
will maybe not sit well with some people, but if they truly listen to what you're saying and not hear you won't ever be happy, right? Instead, they hear give up your expectations and find peace in the mess.
Well, another piece that I talk about in this is contentment. And contentment is another nasty word to put alongside Parkinson's. Because when I speak to Parkinson's groups, I'll ask, how many of you are content with your Parkinson's? And contentment means that at peace kind of state of mind. And that's a hard place to be with Parkinson's. It's a very hard place to be. But again, for me, I stopped and I asked myself, what are my choices here? What are my choices? I am not going to be cured of Parkinson's today. I'm not. So, what can I do today? I can't nurse. I can't run a 7-minute mile. And there was a day I could. I could list you all the things that I can't do. But the list of things that I can do are still higher. It's still longer. there are still so many good things in my life. And those are the things I choose to focus on. And in choosing them, I find contentment. An analogy I use in the book is that how many times in life have we wished that we could go back to mom and dad and just say, Dad, what should I do? Should I go left or right? Well, in a very bizarre way, Parkinson's provides that. Daily, Parkinson's sets the parameters, tells me whether to go left or right. Now, I can be upset with that. I can say I don't like that. I want to set the agenda. I want to know the answers for myself. I want to make the decisions for myself. Or I can accept that my life is still, with Parkinson's, way better than 95% of the planet, and accept that it has placed certain parameters on my world and walk within those parameters with peace, with contentment, and still do all the things that I can do.
I love that. And if you're watching, whether this is live or on replay for you, if you can go back and just listen to that part again about the happiness myth and sit with it and let the feelings come up that come up and try not to judge those feelings. Just sit with that idea that suffering is part of life and see if you can just feel through that process a little bit, because if you can sit in that place, you can come out on the other side, just like Tim said, as a deeper, more developed human being. So
that's right. And it's important for me to say here, I haven't arrived in any of this. It's easy. It's so easy to sit and say this. But folks, you haven't seen me curled up in my bedroom, in my dark room, on the days when I can't get out of bed. You've not seen me when I struggle. We don't put that on Facebook. I get it. I get that what I'm saying can be brutally difficult. But I'm convinced, I am convinced in my heart of hearts that we can learn to persevere, and that in so doing, we will be better people in the end because of it.
Yeah. And that right there, ladies and gentlemen, is why Tim gets to speak every corner of the globe. I have goosebumps. I literally want to cry, and I could continue this conversation for hours because it's just some of my favorite stuff right here. But so Tim's shared a few of his skills, of the 7 skills of perseverance. And so if you want to read more, or is the audiobook also coming out in May? Yes. I know you're recording it. It's also coming out. Okay.
Yes.
So,
and if you like hearing my voice, maybe not. I had the opportunity to read the audiobook, and so it will be my voice coming to you live for 8 hours straight.
That's amazing. That's the way I will probably consume this book. I love audiobooks. I love hearing the authors read them. I love just imagining you're sitting in my head or in my car with me. So you guys there should be a link either above or below, maybe to the side of this video, depending when and where you're watching it. But there will be a link to his book, released in May of 2018. So grab your copy, audio or hardback or both. And Tim, maybe, because I've been fielding some questions, it looks like we actually don't have that many, but I know you were maybe hinting at giving away a copy of your book.
Yes, so, I meant to talk to you about this. I don't have a strategy here.
No strategy. You know what? I like to ad-lib.
Yeah, I would love to give one away to one of your listeners. I just don't know how I want to do it.
Sure. What if we did this? What if we said, after listening to Tim, in the comments section below, if you could give us your definition of perseverance or what it means to you to persevere. Tell us in the comment section below, or maybe tell us why you persevere. Just give us a comment or share this, and we will take, maybe at the end of this week, take all the comments and all the shares and put everybody's name into a hat and maybe draw a winner at the end of the week.
Perfect.
Okay.
I like it.
Perfect.
I like it.
Okay. Awesome. Well, I guess before we sign off, you touched on it a little bit about giving back and how, when you can give back to others, it gets you out of your mind, out of your head about, the anxieties and the stresses that are Parkinson's. But do you have any final thoughts about your approach to this thing called Parkinson's that you want to share that we haven't hit on yet?
Well, be kind to yourself. Be kind to yourself. We have lots of expectations of what we should be able to do. And at 53 years old, I had every expectation of still being a nurse, still fulfilling my career, still running. My wife and I were going to travel and run half marathons around the world. It's been a number of years since I've run a half marathon. And it can be very easy to get very down on ourselves for what we perceive that we can't do anymore. And I just want to tell you guys, give yourselves a break. There's a lot that you can still do. You're still very talented, bright individuals who have a lot to give back to your world. I'm the one that's here to encourage you to remember those things. Find those things. Live in those things. And do your best to let go of the things that you just can't do anymore. Because my 7-minute mile isn't going to come back. I can spend the rest of my life lamenting that, or I can go run a 10-minute mile and be happy with that, or whatever the analogy is. But be good to yourself. Be kind to yourself. Give yourself a break today, and be content with who you are.
Yeah, I love your quote. Do the best that you can today, and let that be it. Essentially,
Yeah.
do your best, and then release the rest. Essentially,
yeah. Have the strength to persevere, and the courage to be content with whatever that best looks like.
That's one of my favorites.
And we'll do okay. We will do okay.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, Tim, this has been a pleasure. I hope that we can do it again at some point down the road. But in the meantime, can you tell people maybe where to find you, what your website is, Facebook, Instagram, where do you hang out?
Number one place I hang out is timsenior.ca, timsr.ca. You'll find the book there. You'll find my speaking stuff and whatnot. And then you can find me on social media, Tim Hague Sr. It's TimHaguesr. Instagram and Facebook and, all of those things. Love to have you follow me. Always like making new Parkinson's friends. And if you ever have need, I'm always looking for someplace new to share my story. I'm passionate about it. I love it. I have a lot of fun with it. I speak in schools. I speak for corporations, banks, you name it, I've spoke there, as well as Parkinson's. I'm always thrilled to speak for Parkinson's. So if you ever have need, look me up on my website, and I'd love to come help you out.
Beautiful. Yep. Bring him out to your next event, guys. He's amazing. So.
Thank you so
much. All right, Tim. Yes. Well, thank you so much for being here. And again, if you guys are watching and you've made it to the end, make sure you put in the comment section how you persevere, what your definition of perseverance is. Share with us that, because when you share, other people are enlightened. As Tim shared his story, other people are lifted up. So share in the comments, or just share this video with someone that you know to help them persevere. And at the end of the week, we'll draw a winner who will get a free copy of Tim's book. So please do that. Share, like, comment, and of course, Tim and I are both rooting for you to keep moving and sending you, lots of big hugs. Okay. Bye, guys.